Grab your Bibles. We're going to go to the book of Luke, chapter 10. Book of Luke, chapter 10. And I'm really excited about this sermon. I've been really excited about this series we've been in for the last 6 weeks, talking about blind spots in our lives, really dealing with this idea of addressing these areas. And again, I've often said that I recognize that in my preparation and in my prayer time, that I'm not always preaching to everybody, right? I recognize that sometimes God has given me a sermon and it's for 100 people in the room or 50 people in the room. Sometimes God gives you a sermon and you know that it's a specific context, or God is giving it to you so you can share it with somebody else. But there are times when I believe, as I said last week, that God gives content that is right for everybody. And last week we talked about overcoming doubt. Anybody enjoy overcoming doubt? Amen, being inspired. But this week we're going to talk about the danger of distraction. The danger of distraction. How many people, before we even jump into this text, can be honest and self-aware enough to say, I live a pretty distracted life? Can anybody just testify to that? Like, I am all over the place. Anybody like me, you ever tried to sit down and pray and you really felt spiritual in the moment, and like a little worship pad was playing, maybe you had some music playing in the background and you started praying, like, Lord, I want to just hear you, Lord. I just want to be in your presence. Lord, I'm listening. Lord, I'm here today because I want to make time for you. I want to make time for all you're going to say to me. Lord, you're just amazing. You're awesome. Did I cut the stove off? Do the kids get home at 3:15 or 3:30? I don't remember. Did I send it? Is that my phone buzzing? I'm sorry, Lord. Lord, this is about you right now. Anybody ever been there, like, just prayer life just be all distracted? Happens to me all the time. I'm like, God, I just have so much going through my mind. Thanks, Rivers. I'm good. So it's amazing how distracted we live in life. And many times they will tell you in psychology that there are two different forms of distractions. There are what we call intrusions that are just our mind wandering, our inability to stay focused on one particular thing. But then there are interferences, things that are external, things that are not our doing. An example of an intrusion, as I mentioned, is like a mind wandering. I can't seem to focus on one thought. I can't seem to put 10 minutes to the side without my phone. That's an intrusion. But an interference is a form of distraction that might be my phone ringing. That's something external. That came from not inside, but outside. My focus is not there because I can't seem to cut the TV off. That's an external interference. Or I'm trying to get this particular project done or assignment done, and I just seem to constantly be bothered by children or family or a task, and so those things are external. And distractions are really an issue in our culture today. And I love this particular passage that we're going to read, Luke 10, verse 38, because it simply highlights to us that distractions have been an issue since the beginning of time. Since Jesus' time, distractions have been an issue. Let's go to Luke 10, verse 38. I'm reading from the NIV version first, and it reads like this. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened up her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. All right, very familiar passage. We love to use this passage when it comes to conversations about worship and putting God first. Verse 40, I love what happens. It says, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is, love this word, better, and it will not be taken away from her. I want to read from the New Living Translation, the NLT, really quick. I'm going to read this version really quick. Let's start at verse 40. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. Anybody didn't have enough time for family because you were cooking? You cooked the whole time and you missed out on all the good conversations. Anybody ever had that happen? They laughing over in the living room. They having a good old time, and you slaving over a hot stove, and it's amazing. He said, "You're preparing this dinner." You came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you?" Her perspective was, "Lord, doesn't it seem a little odd that I'm doing all the work and she is seemingly relaxing? Doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all this work? Tell her to come and help me." But Jesus said, or the Lord said to her, "Dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about." Love this language. Mary has discovered it. Tap your neighbor on the leg and ask them, "Have you discovered your priorities?" Whoa. Have you discovered your priorities? Anybody wear glasses in the room? Anybody wear glasses? All my glass people. Oh, my Lord. They're more than I anticipated. Glasses. For my people who wear glasses, my wife has glasses. My wife, I've said before, for those who've heard me talk about her vision, she is a -9. She's a -9. I used to say she was a -12, but she brought it clear. She said, "I'm a -9. I said, "Okay, that's still bad. Negative is always bad." And my wife is about details. She's like, "I'm not a -12, Vernon. I'm a -9. I was like, "You still can't drive me." So she's a -9. She has pretty bad vision. Has had glasses since I've met her. And part of being married to somebody, I think you kind of get thrust into their world, right? You get thrust into, if they have a medical condition, you find yourself Googling, right, about how to cook for them, how to support them. And my wife recently had an ordeal with her vision, and so she went to the optometrist, and I began to be inspired to do some more research again. And I began to listen to the doctor, and I began to hear all the results, and I began to do my own research about her contact lenses and her glasses. And when you study it, it starts to help you understand that if you are farsighted, I don't know if you know this, your eye does not have adequate focusing power because the light rays fail to form at the quickest time. So the light rays that you need to form vision do not get to your eyes quick enough if you are farsighted. On the opposite end, if you are if you are nearsighted, light rays focus too early. They get to your eyes too early. And so what prescriptions do is they help you focus the amount of time it takes for the light to arrive at the eye so that you can, catch this, so that you can control or have greater control over your focusing power. Somebody say focusing power. Yeah, put those images up with those glasses. I don't know if we have anybody who would understand what it means to put a pair of glasses on. When I was in high school, I used to, matter of fact, no more so like college, I used to wear personality glasses. Anybody remember personality glasses when that was like a thing? You buy glasses that have no power. To buy glasses just for the look of it. Like, I would look good with glasses, right? But they had no ability to increase your focusing power. They were just there for the look of it. They were just there to make you look cute. They were just there because you thought if your eyes was jacked up, you might look good with glasses. They were just an option. It's amazing to me. Here it is. I want you to understand this. The quality of your vision will be determined by how well you control your focusing power. Watch this, because the goal of life is not how much can you see. The goal of life is how clear can you see. I need to help somebody. Challenge with culture is that we are become very good at seeing a whole lot, but not seeing a whole lot clearly. We're in relationships where we are exposed to a whole lot, but we still don't know our relationship status. We've done a whole lot, but still can't tell you where we stand. And so we have seen and done a lot, but we still have no clarity about what we are actually even seeing. I know I'm going to step on some toes right there. It's all right. It's amazing that in our jobs we have done a whole lot, but we are still unclear about our purpose. And what starts to happen in life is that we start to go through life affirming our ability to love and live by how much we see, but not how clearly we see. And I believe the attack of the enemy on culture has been to allow us to see too much. Me and my wife were sitting down, eating dinner a couple weeks ago. I went on a date Friday night, and if I may share my heart transparently, she began to say to me, she said, Vernon, I'm torn about Puerto Rico, and I'm frustrated about Florida, and I'm frustrated about Texas, and I'm frustrated about the racial divide in our country. And we begin to walk through these lists of things that we've been exposed to over the last couple months. And when you really start to think about how much we have seen, and how much we have heard, and how much we're wrestling with as a culture and as a community and as a world, I started to tell her, I said, part of the challenge now actually is people are becoming numb. Because we don't even know where to focus. Where do I focus my tears? Where do I focus my frustrations? Because does it seem like every single week I could apply my focus somewhere new? Focus is something that will help bring peace to your life when you got it. Bring power to your life when you got it. Bring perspective to your life when you got it. And there is a crisis in our culture called distraction. We often hear it talked about when we talk about distracted driving. Anybody text and drive? Come on here, tell the truth, shame the devil. All right, don't pull out next to none of y'all. Distracted driving is a very common thing we talk about. You know, we understand that we have all of these different types of distractions, but one of the psychology areas or psychological areas that has been under study that we don't hear a lot about is distracted living. Can I just teach for a few moments? Distracted living is an epidemic in our world. This is where you miss out on much of your life simply because you aren't paying attention. Literally, in a study, in a book written called The Age of Information by Dr. Adam Gazzaley, he says that technology and information has made us better connected and informed, catch this, but it has also made our lives more rushed, hectic, and distracted, and research is now proving that the brain is not coping with the amount of information we receive and actually causing us to become more unfulfilled in life. Distracted living. How many of us can you don't got to raise your hand, just testify to the fact in our own hearts that we've been in a lot of rooms but haven't paid attention to what was happening? We've been around family, but we were present physically but not mentally. We were out on a date, but we didn't really build the intimacy of our relationship because we spent most of our time scrolling and not talking. I'm guilty of it. I was extremely convicted when I began to prepare for this sermon as God began to deal with me on my own distracted behavior. You know, when I'm at home, I love this church and I love what God is doing through the life of this church. But the reality of it is, like, it takes work and it takes time. And so we get a phone call at 5 o'clock and at 6 o'clock and at 7 o'clock and at 8 o'clock. And I started to think, how many opportunities have I forfeited with my children because I was giving my attention to the church when I should have been giving it to being a father? I'll be the first to tell you that this sermon convicts us. I'm not preaching to you, I'm preaching to us. We all are in a world that is striving for our attention constantly. But the consequence is we are missing out on life. For some of us, we are experts at everything that's happening in our culture, but we're still immature at what's happening in our spiritual life. We can tell you all the news that is happening on our timeline, but we cannot tell you about the awakening that's happening on the inside of us because we have given our focus to social media. We've given our focus to CNN. We've given our focus to Fox. We've given our focus to people and their conversations. We've given our focus to encouraging friends. But we have not given our focus to God to sit at his feet and say, Lord, I understand about everybody else, but can you help me understand what's happening in me? But that cannot happen unless we give ourselves the opportunity to walk in focus. I love this passage. I love this passage because in this particular passage, we love to highlight this particular passage with Mary and Martha, specifically from the context of worship. But I believe that what we are seeing in this passage is something that affects our entire lives. I believe that this scenario plays out in our families, plays out in our relationships, plays out in our friendships, plays out in our spiritual life. It is important that we understand what's happening here. Jesus is coming to town, and Martha and Mary allowed him to come to the house. I would let Jesus come to my house too. I don't know about you. That's somebody worth cleaning up for. And Jesus comes and he's at the house. Now here's where it gets good. Here's where it gets good. If you've ever been married and you read 5 Love Languages book, you know that there are different ways to show your love language. I love this, right? So there are 5 different love languages if you want to read the book. The 5 love languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, physical touch, and and quality time. Come on here, Holy Ghost. Somebody help me out. And 5 different love languages. And essentially what the book teaches you is that we often love people the way we want to be loved, not the way they desire to be loved. So my wife is acts of service. So I can kiss her on the neck. I can play slow jams all day long, but that is not what she wants from me. What my wife wants from me is for me to cut the grass, wash the dishes. Come on here, y'all ain't gonna say nothing, and take the trash out. Because she is an acts of service person. Me, on the other hand, you can make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich as long as when the slow jams come on, y'all ain't gonna say nothing. I'm married, so. And so it is important to understand love languages. Here's what I love about many times when we try to build relationship with the Spirit of God. Here's what I see here. Morgan, catch this. Jesus comes, and Martha decides, I'm going to love Jesus the way I want to be loved. She is doing all of these acts of service. She's cooking. She's cleaning. And then she comes to Jesus and like, but you ain't loving me back. And Jesus, in a beautiful explanation of the love language, it says, I don't want to be loved by your service. I want to be loved by your quality time. And the question becomes, when is the last time that you've given God your quality time? Watch this, because quality time is not when you're about to fall asleep at night. Oh, it gets good right here. And quality time is not when you're just on your way to work. And quality time is not when you're in between meetings. Quality time is when I sacrificed them for you. Quality time is when I did something that was out of my norm so that, God, you could be my norm. Quality time says, Lord, I value your presence more than I value her presence or his presence, because I honestly can't even survive them without you. So, Lord, help me be qualitative in my time with you. Who am I talking to that you can be honest and say, I don't remember the last time he's got my quality time? Jesus said, you're missing a wonderful opportunity because you're loving me the wrong way. And I was just wondering today, how many of us can leave this room challenged, maybe stretched even, to think about our time a little differently. But here's where the enemy steps in. Oh, the enemy is so good. We do have a tempter and an enemy against our relationship with God, an enemy that does not desire us to build intimacy with God. That enemy is very good at his job. We don't like to give him credit, but he's been doing it for a long time. The tempter really understands, catch this, how to limit our ability to arrive at intimacy. Here's what he does. He doesn't fight you physically. He fights you with distractions. And there is no greater defeat than defeat by distraction. Oh, I need you to understand this today, because so many times what has killed the opportunity for us to go to the next level in God, which ultimately would mean the next level of your life, is that we have been defeated not by a giant in front of us, but by a giant inside of us. Defeat by distraction. And you need to understand this, because if we are going to effectively grow not only in our relationship with God, but in our relationship that God has made us responsible for, the relationship that God has called us to in our life, we are going to have to become more aware of how to create focusing power. It's important that we understand that distraction is an attack of the enemy. I love the passage that said the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but he came that we may have life. So what is the enemy trying to steal? What is he trying to destroy? What is he trying to kill? What, you may ask. It is the type of life that you could have if you put your focus in the right places. I need you to understand today that the enemy has become very proficient at understanding what you could become many times before you knew what you could become. That's why your life is under such great attack. That's why that person keeps walking back into your life even when you thought you were done with them. That's why you keep getting text messages when you said you wouldn't go back down that path, because the enemy understands that if you ever grabbed hold of focus, then you would be dangerous. So if he keeps you in a perpetual state of distraction, you will die in process and never in potential. Defeat by distraction. What distracts you on a daily basis? I just did this example of our prayer life, but the reality of it is that happens in many forms. Many of us have been called to write a book, and every time you sit down to write, you get distracted. You've been called to spend more time with your spouse, and every time you make plans, you get distracted. You've been called to spend more time with your kids in this season maybe, and every time you try, you get. You've been called to go to the next level at your job. You are right where God wants you to be. And he said, I'm about to prepare you for the promotion, but I need you to give a little more in this season. I need you to come in a little earlier. I need you to work a little harder. I need you to skip a few lunches. I'm talking about work ethic now. He said, this is the right place, but God, I'm about to take you to the next level. But soon as you try to go to the next level in your work ethic, all of a sudden, distractions. And I love what Craig Rochelle says. He says, the key to overcoming this, the key to concentration is so simple, is elimination. Help 20 people today. Maybe it's only for 20, Clay. If you want to concentrate, you got to start eliminating some stuff. So profound that it is impossible to give 100% of your focus to everything. So the question is, for each one of us, I can't answer this question for you. Here's a simple question for you to take home today. What are you going to let go of so your focus can be increased? What has to be eliminated? What has to go? Three things that I think are critical to this particular sermon. Here it is. The first thing I think we all must do if we're going to be better in our focusing power, we have to reassess. Which is defined as to evaluate again, especially after new factors present themselves. Part of the danger of life, I love it, it's so simple, is that a distracted life prompts you to keep doing the same thing without new results. The distracted life wakes you up and you go through the motions and you do a whole bunch of stuff, and then you fall asleep at night and you do it all over again and wonder why you look up in a year or two and you do not experience the fulfillment of your destiny the way God has called you to or as it planted in your spirit. Why? Because distraction helps you ignore a lack of progress. Distraction will make you think that you're doing a lot. Because, we all know busy people. I love it when I talk to people all the time. We're like, yo, what's going on, man? I'm just busy, bro. I'm just staying busy. Staying busy. Somebody said, don't got a job. How you busy, Tommy? You don't got no job, Tommy? Busy. I talk to people all the time. They're like, I'm busy, man. I'm just staying busy. And I'd be like, well, are you staying productive? Because just because you're doing stuff don't mean you're doing the right stuff. And just because you posting don't mean you progressing. Y'all ain't going to say nothing today. And I am just tired of people being busy and unproductive. But the enemy is good at making you feel like busy is the goal. So you will feel like because the calendar is full, you should experience fulfillment at the end of the day. And you can't seem to figure out, why is it that my calendar is full, but I'm still unfulfilled? because you were busy, but you were still unproductive. And it is time, if you are going to overcome the defeat of distraction, you're going to have to say to yourself, where, God, do I need to eliminate some things in my life? Because the key to concentration is elimination. I'm sorry, I can't talk to you every day anymore, because in order for me to increase my focusing power, something got to go. You didn't make the cut. I got to start reassessing what areas of my life are more of a barrier to me growing, come on here, than a blessing. What people, get real good here. What people constantly pull on my time, and they ain't listening to my advice anyway. Come on, somebody pop in your head immediately. You talk to them every night. You be like, same conversation, different day. What is it going to take for you to recognize reassessing? So this takes work. Tap your neighbor on the leg, say, this takes work. Because see, here's what we love about church. Many of us love the church to medicate us. We love the medicated church. The church that gives us a prescription that makes us feel good in the moment. But if you know anything about going into the hospital, they don't just give you a prescription, a medication. They give you instruction on how to constantly get better, because the goal of medication is not for you to live on it. The goal is for you to get past it so that you can live a healthy life. Don't keep coming to church and expecting what you heard to change your life. The goal is to get the information, and then you got to do the work in your life. Boy, I know this is going to be a tough sermon today. So you have to leave and assess, what do I have to do to live a more focused life? Reassess. Because I need you to understand this. This is so important as we start to think about our lives and think about focusing power. When I started to think about this sermon, this thing came to me. The illusion of progress is doing more and experiencing less, because it is possible to be blessed and stressed. But I would like to argue that that is not the design of God. That God's blessings, when protected with appropriate boundaries, are designed for you to experience life, and life more abundantly. That does not mean you won't have difficult days. That does not mean that you won't have challenges to work through. But God's intent is not for you to live in a perpetual state of disappointment and stress and frustration simply because you allow distractions to defeat your joy. Ooh. Reassess what has to go. Here's the second thing. You got to reconnect. You have to reconnect. This is an intentional decision to prioritize in your life. Because catch this, what you do not prioritize, you will eventually marginalize. Truth of the matter is, many of us have marginalized great relationships in our life simply because we did not prioritize them in our life. Some of us can look back to seasons in our relationship. We'll be honest. It wasn't that we didn't love each other. It wasn't that we did not care for each other. It wasn't that we were not willing to do anything for each other. The only problem was we didn't prioritize each other. And God is calling you to reconnect to the world around you, reconnect to relationships in a qualitative way. I know this is a countercultural sermon, because this means that we have to put down our phone when we're in rooms. This means that we have to have conversations and not just send text messages. Oh boy. This means that we have to do the work of connecting ourselves in the right ways. How many of us live disconnected lives? Disconnected lives. And it's important that we understand this, because even as we talk about the growth of our spirituality, this is why we've been entering into this challenge. If you're unaware of it, I want to remind you that all this month, we've been challenging our church to pray first. What that means is that when we wake up in the morning, we want to pray before we start doing stuff. Before I check my social media timeline, before I check my emails, before I respond to text messages, before I work out, I want to pray first. Because what does that say to God? It says that you are a priority. I want to pray first. Here's the other thing we've been challenging ourselves to do. That twice a week we want to fast. Doesn't matter what fast you do, don't matter what day you choose. But twice a week, I'm going to declare to myself that, God, you are so much a priority in my life that I am going to place you above my appetite, above the friends that I could go to lunch with. For 1 month, I'm going to make you the priority. Why? Because I want to reconnect my spirituality with you. I want to reconnect at a deeper level. We've also been talking about reading the Bible daily and, catch this, creating time to meditate on that word. Because some of us love to pull out the Bible app. Nothing wrong with the Bible app, no judgment zone. But we love to scroll, read, but then we never stop to ask the Lord, Spirit, what are you saying to me about this? Because you're not powerful because you can quote it. You're powerful because you can live it. And so the enemy's attack is to make you stay. Okay, read it. Cool, I feel good. I read the Bible today. But are you living it? And until you start creating space in your life and time in your life for you to say, Holy Spirit, what are you saying to me about this passage? How am I supposed to apply this to my life? How am I supposed to apply this to my attitude? How am I supposed to apply this to my decisions? How am I supposed to apply this to my marriage? How am I supposed to apply this to my parenting? How am I supposed to apply this to my vocational decision? Lord, help me apply it, not just memorize it and quote it. This is what we're trying to accomplish this month, to reconnect to the Spirit of God. Martha is in God's presence, catch it, but she's disconnected from his teaching. Y'all see this in the text? Jesus comes in, and Aaron, Jesus is teaching. It said Mary was listening to him teach. So she is connected spiritually to a life-giving source. There is a difference between being connected and being in the environment. Martha's in the house, but she's not growing as a product of Jesus being there. Aaron, Martha's in the house, but when Jesus leaves, she's still going to be the same. Because he said, you are distracted by the details of that. But what I have to offer is better. And could it be that for many of us, we have settled for a version of life that seems positive and productive and progressive, but it's only because we're doing a lot of stuff. But he said, but only a few things really matter. Could you find a greater level of fulfillment when you leave today if you did less of all the stuff and more of the right stuff? Could it be that there is a better life for you if you were willing to eliminate some places, spaces, things, and people that really weren't allowing you to get closer or reconnect to God, but really they were in your life, probably planted, y'all ain't gonna say amen right there, just to help you live distracted so that you would not arrive at destiny? I wonder how many of us, if we started to reassess our life, we would disconnect from some people because we would realize you might just be planted in my life to keep me distracted. Because every time I try to grow and reconnect with God, you seem to distract me. I wish I had somebody that would say, I've been distracted before. But God, I don't want to be Martha. I want to be Mary. I don't want to say I just came to church. I want to say church changed me. I don't want to say I just read the scripture. I want to say the scripture changed me. And this cannot happen if we live distracted lives. Reconnect. Here's the last thing. After you reassess and after you reconnect, I believe that you then get the opportunity to rejoice. Here's the thing that's interesting. When you look at the definition of rejoice, it literally says to enjoy the possession of, or to be full of joy. And when the enemy has taught us to walk in a perpetual state of distraction, you can't rejoice until you realize what you're in possession of. I'm going to say that again because I need somebody to catch that in their spirit. You cannot rejoice until you realize what you are in possession of. You cannot rejoice until you stop and reclaim your attention and realize what you are in possession of. How many of us are so distracted that we can't experience joy because we don't even realize what we already have? What you already are in possession of. Some of you are surrounded by love and full of insecurity. Because the distraction of the enemy is to make you look at everybody else's timeline and everybody else's body and everybody else's stuff. And as long as you're looking here, you can't rejoice because you don't even realize you're in possession of people who love you just the way you are. Some of us are constantly distracted. I'm trying to do this for my boss. I'm trying to make this. I want to get this accolade. I want to get up here and say, I want to do this. And I'm going to achieve all these goals. And I'm going to accomplish all these things. And your head's down and you're driving forward. But then you're going to look up one day and realize I missed that I was in the possession of a family who loved me whether I got the promotion or not. Who loved me whether I made more money or not. Who loved me whether I got the title or not. He didn't need me to be on the plane. He needed me to be at his game. She didn't need me to bring home a check this week. She needed me to bring home my time this week. I know I may not be preaching to you. Maybe I'm just preaching to myself. I want to be transparent about how this sermon has impacted my life. Because honestly, it will impact your life. Impact the life of this church. I was at a conference called Catalyst. And it's the premier leadership Christian conference in the country, essentially. And got an opportunity to go, and we were able to take 5 people from our team here at the church. And we're there, and I think I'm going, self-righteous. I've given 5 people the opportunity to go to the premier Christian conference, in the country for free. So I think I'm going for them. First session, Andy Stanley walks out on stage. If you don't know who Andy Stanley is, he about 3 or 4 times has had the largest church in the country. And walks out on stage. He was the very first session. And he says, I know I have a limited amount of time. I know I'm supposed to teach on all this stuff. But I just feel impressed upon my heart to say this. Some of you are sacrificing what only you can do for something that eventually somebody else will do. And here's how he explained it. He said, some of you, because there's a whole bunch of leaders, all leaders come to the conference. He said, some of you are so busy pastoring your church, which eventually somebody else will do. Like, if we want a life church, eventually I will not be relevant. Eventually. I might have a lot of years to go, but eventually, I'm cool. Eventually. Somebody else will preach. Eventually, somebody else will counsel. Eventually, somebody else will teach. But nobody will ever be able to parent my children. Nobody will ever be able to be their dad. I'm their only dad. And he said, so many of you are sacrificing what only you can do for what eventually somebody else will do. And I begin to think about this sermon, and I begin to feel God leap in my spirit and say, Vernon, you've been too distracted. And I just sat there in my mind for the rest of that session. And he began to explain boundaries he put in his life to make sure his kids never felt like they came second to the church. And I just remember riding home, and Aaron will testify to this. We were riding home. It was an 8-hour drive from Atlanta. And then I went around the car. What was your big takeaway? What was your big takeaway? And all of these world-renowned speakers, Tim Tebow spoke, and all these people. And the only thing I could pull out of my mouth, I'm going to be a better father and a husband when I go home. I'm going to be a better father and a husband. Whatever that means. And so I say that with great sincerity today that this sermon is for all of us. I am ambitious. I can admit that. I want this church to do well. I want it to be great. I want us to change the world. I want us to change our city. I want us to change the culture. I want to do things the best way we can possibly do it. But if I look up one day and I was distracted, how can I rejoice if I don't even realize what I'm in possession of? That my greatest gift is not how many people show up on Sunday. Although I would want y'all to come back next week. But y'all are not the greatest gift in my life. This church's success over the last 2 years is wonderful. I am so humble. We grew up in 2 small country churches. We could not believe it if the Lord would have told us. It's not the greatest gift that God gave. Greatest gift God gave is my kids and my wife. And that's the example I want to set at this church. And so it's my charge today to simply say this. I just want to live what I preach. I'm going to challenge y'all to live less distracted lives. My promise to you is that I'm going to live a less distracted life. And I believe that we'll really be able to start singing the words. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. But how can I rejoice and be glad in what he's made if I'm too distracted to realize what I'm in possession of? Can you stand up on your feet all across the room?